group retirement products. That's why we're your retirement company. Additional support has been provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people. And by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. From the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center in New York, Megan Thompson.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The impeachment inquiry will enter a new phase this week with the first public hearing scheduled before the House Intelligence Committee. On Wednesday, William Taylor, the senior U.S. diplomat to Ukraine, and George Kent, a senior State Department official in charge of Ukraine, will testify. On Friday, former ambassador to Ukraine Marie Yovanovitch will testify. Yesterday, Republicans submitted names of at least 8 people they would like to see testify, including former Vice President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, and the anonymous whistleblower whose complaint kicked off the impeachment inquiry. Adam Schiff, the Democratic chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, responded in a letter that the hearings, quote, will not serve as vehicles for any member to carry out the same sham investigations into the Bidens or debunked conspiracies about 2016 U.S. election interference that President Trump pressed Ukraine to conduct, unquote. Schiff also wrote that the whistleblower has the right to remain anonymous and that evidence already collected confirms the whistleblower's complaint. But how the impeachment inquiry started and the process so far remains a point of criticism for Republicans.
I consider any impeachment in the House that doesn't allow us to know who the whistleblower is to be invalid, because without the whistleblower complaint, we wouldn't be talking about any of this.
Republicans are also addressing some of the underlying allegations that President Trump pressed Ukraine to investigate a political rival, possibly in return for military aid.
I believe it was inappropriate. I do not believe it was impeachable.
Here are the 2 possible scenarios. Number 1, the president asked for an investigation of a political rival. Number 2, the president asked for an investigation of possible corruption by someone who happens to be a political rival. The latter would be in the national interest. The former would be in the president's parochial interest and would be over the line.
Democrats are defending the inquiry and believe that the public hearings will play an important role.
We have enough evidence from the depositions that we've done to warrant bringing this forward, evidence of an extortion scheme using taxpayer dollars to ask a foreign government to investigate the president's opponent. But it's important that these witnesses raise their right hands and take questions from both Republicans and Democrats. The president is going to get that.
For more on the most recent developments in the impeachment inquiry and what's in store this week, NewsHour correspondent Lisa Desjardins joins us now from Washington, D.C. So we know that Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff has already rejected at least 2 of the people that Republicans want to see testify, Hunter Biden and the whistleblower. Are there any people on their list that we think the Democrats will go for?
My guess is that they will likely call Kurt Volker, the former U.S. envoy to Ukraine. He is someone that Republicans and Democrats think helps both of their cases, and he testified behind closed doors. And I think it's also very possible they'll call the other 2 witnesses they've already heard from behind closed doors. That's David Hale. He's the number 3 official at the State Department right now. And then in addition to that, Tim Morrison. He's a National Security Council official who recently left. Republicans like him because he's well known to them. He used to work as a House staffer. Democrats believe he also adds credence to some of their theories. So those 3, I think, we could see agreement on hearing from for both parties.
What else stood out to you about this Republican list?
Well, this is not a unique thought for me, but it is interesting that not only do Republicans want to call the whistleblower whose name they say they don't know, or that at least they're not putting out in public because it's protected from lawmakers disclosing, but they also want to call anyone who helped the whistleblower put together the letter raising complaint, anyone who helped the whistleblower along the way.
Are Republicans completely united in their desire to see the whistleblower testify?
Oof. I don't know if Republicans are united on the nuances here, but I do think Republicans are united in wanting to try and find out what this person's motivations were. Is this someone who has worked with Democratic officials in the past and could have a political bias against the president? They all want to find that out. They disagree on how far to go to do that.
White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney did not show up on Friday to testify, even though he did receive a subpoena. And now we're learning this weekend that he's joining a lawsuit over House subpoena power. What is that all about?
It's fascinating. Mulvaney, who himself is technically the top staffer at the White House, is saying that he isn't sure if he should follow White House directives that he not testify or if he should comply with the subpoena. This is a change from his flat refusal before. Mulvaney now, rather than just flat reject the subpoena, is saying, hey, I want to wait for a court to rule in. There's a lot of strategy here. We could go on for hours, but essentially, I think what Mulvaney is doing here is he doesn't want to add to Democrats' case for obstruction. He wants to say, hey, the only reason I'm not cooperating is because I'm waiting for a court, rather than I refuse to. Democrats think he is obstructing their investigation, and they will raise that point.
Another central player in all of this is President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Democrats have not requested his testimony. Why is that?
So interesting. You know, they did subpoena documents from Mr. Giuliani in September. So early on, he refused. And they believe that he would continue to refuse a subpoena for testimony. But nonetheless, they haven't issued it. I am wondering myself exactly why they haven't issued that subpoena. And we know that Republicans also have not requested his testimony. You know, my takeaway from this is both sides believe he could either be a shield or a detriment to the president. And both sides are nervous potentially about his testimony at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if his name comes up later, but we have to wait and see. There's a lot of caution about Rudy Giuliani. Both sides know he's unpredictable.
So the hearings will kick off on Wednesday morning. What can we expect to see happen? How's it all going to work? And what are you going to be looking for?
Well, I think anyone who wants to come need to get in line early. I expect a long line for this one. And we're going to have 3 witnesses this weekend, starting with Bill Taylor, who is now the lead ambassador, the lead diplomat rather, in Ukraine, in Kiev, followed by another State Department official, George Kent, a longtime career official here in Washington. And then finally, next week, we'll hear from the former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. These are all 3 of the strongest witnesses Democrats feel for their case that the president or his staff or both were trying to extort Ukraine, essentially, to force them to get investigations in exchange for millions of dollars that Ukraine needed. So we're going to hear a lot about that from Democrats with all of these witnesses. But in the meantime, Republicans are still getting together on exactly the points they want to push the most. The messaging has changed again and again, but I think they're most likely to raise the idea that no one directly connects that idea of a quid pro quo or forcing Ukraine to do something from aid money to the president. None of these witnesses heard that directly from the president. They also are very likely to raise these other investigations that they think are the real problem. The idea of Hunter Biden, what was he doing in Ukraine, and the 2016 election. We could see more fights about whether that is a conspiracy theory, as Democrats say, or something relevant, as Republicans argue.
Lisa Desjardins, we look forward to hearing a lot more from you this week. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bolivia's President Evo Morales resigned late this afternoon after the country's military leader called for him to step down and after weeks of protests. Just hours earlier, Morales called for new elections after the Organization of American States released a report that found, quote, a heap of observed irregularities in October's presidential election. 3 people have died and hundreds more were injured in violent nationwide demonstrations since the disputed election. In Iraq today, violent anti-government demonstrations continued one day after 6 people were killed in central Baghdad. Security forces used live ammunition, tear gas, and sound bombs on the protesters while fighting to take back control of the last major bridge that leads to the government headquarters. Security forces also put up concrete barriers in central Baghdad to block the protesters' movements. Iraqi security forces have killed more than 260 demonstrators since the protests began in October. Anti-government demonstrators mourning the death of a student activist and angry over the arrest of pro-democracy lawmakers confronted police in Hong Kong today. Protesters vandalized a shopping mall and a subway station before riot police armed with tear gas confronted them. Pro-democracy lawmakers are warning that the government may use the violence as an excuse to postpone or cancel Hong Kong district council elections scheduled for later this month. More than 3,300 people have been arrested since the protests began 6 months ago. In Australia, half of the more than 70 wildfires in the state of New South Wales are still not under control, and officials are warning of catastrophic conditions to come. Winds dropped slightly today across the region, where 3 people have died since last Friday. But forecasts of high temperatures, strong winds, and low humidity for Tuesday caused officials to warn residents in Sydney, Australia's largest city, of a catastrophic fire danger. It's the first time Sydney's been placed on the highest alert since the new fire danger ratings were introduced in 2009. And in London today, British royalty and political leaders marked Remembrance Day. At 11 a.m., Big Ben sounded and the assembled crowd observed a 2-minute moment of silence. Remembrance Day is an annual event in the UK to commemorate the end of World War I in November of 1918 and to honor those killed then and in subsequent wars. In a separate event, 750,000 red paper poppies, used as symbols of those who served, were dropped from a World War II-era plane. Mercury will cross between the sun and the Earth on Monday morning. Watch it live at pbs.org/newshour. This week, a humanitarian aid worker goes on trial in Arizona for allegedly harboring 2 undocumented migrants who entered the country illegally. The charges fall under U.S. harboring laws, which prohibit people from concealing or shielding any unauthorized individuals who come into and remain in the United States. But migrant rights advocates in Arizona say the enforcement of these laws is wholly political and is being used to push an anti-immigrant agenda, discouraging Good Samaritan efforts along the border. NewsHour Weekend's Yvette Feliciano has more.
Like this one says, Vaya con la fuerza de Dios, which means go with the strength of God.
On a 90-degree day in early September, Paige Cork-Klein and Maria Rodriguez set out into Arizona's Cabeza Prieta National Wildlife Refuge on a mission. There they left canned food, water, and socks for any migrants traveling from Mexico into the U.S. through this difficult terrain.
When it's this hot and people are traveling the distances that they are, dehydration is an issue, but also hyponatremia, which is a salt and electrolyte imbalance. Things that might, in like an everyday hike, not be a big deal, like a blister, out here can be deadly because they result in people not being able to keep up with their group and getting left behind.
Cork-Klein and Rodriguez are both volunteers with the interfaith humanitarian organization called No More Deaths. It aims to prevent the deaths of undocumented migrants attempting to enter the country on foot through Arizona's dangerous deserts.
We track all of the work that we do and make sure that we're looking at which drops are effective and getting to people who need it and which ones aren't.
It's one of several organizations born in the last 20 years as a result of what the groups call a humanitarian crisis along the U.S.-Mexico border. In that time, more than 7,500 migrants have died crossing the border, according to U.S. Border Patrol statistics. Here in Arizona, more than 3,000 migrants have died in the desert, according to the Pima County Office of the Medical Examiner. The actual number of border deaths is unknown because the figures only include cases reported to the authorities, and no one knows how many bodies have never been found.
The journey has gotten a lot longer and more difficult, even in the past 10 years.
Cork-Klein believes the rise in migrant deaths here is a direct result of a border enforcement strategy that began under President Clinton in 1994, called Prevention Through Deterrence. It more than tripled the manpower and infrastructure along the border and closed off traditional ports of entry closer to main roads and highways, rerouting migrants to some of the most barren areas of the desert.
A lot of our drops used to be really big and close to roads, and just consistently people are getting pushed into more and more remote corridors.
In a press release last year, Border Patrol said there are 34 rescue beacons located throughout the Tucson sector, and that it rescued 750 people in fiscal year 2017. Volunteers with the group No More Deaths also go on search and rescue missions and document border enforcement activity, but the federal government says they're breaking the law. In recent years, several have had federal criminal charges brought against them. This year, 4 were convicted on misdemeanor criminal charges that stemmed from an encounter with a U.S. Fish and Wildlife officer at the Cabeza Prieta National Wildlife Refuge. The charges included abandoning personal property, which federal regulations prohibit, and entering a protected wilderness area without a permit, something all visitors to the wilderness refuge must obtain and sign. 22-year-old Zachila Orozco is one of those convicted.
We did not have permits because we did not agree with the clause that indicated that one could not leave food and water and other supplies in the desert, because to us that infringed on the humanitarian aid work that we were providing that is necessary.
What was your reaction when you heard federal charges?
A little, ludicrous. I don't know. From the very beginning, the prosecution was pushing for maximum penalties, which included 6 months in federal prison per each charge and $5,000 per charge.
A spokesperson for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service told PBS NewsHour Weekend in an email that all visitors are required and expected to adhere to federal laws and regulations while visiting refuge lands. A federal magistrate judge ordered Orozco and her 3 co-defendants to each pay a $250 fine and sentence them to 15 months of unsupervised probation. They are all currently appealing the decision.
This is not something new.
It's a situation that Reverend John Fife, a co-founder of No More Deaths, is familiar with.
This is the latest attempt after a long history of threats and attempts to convict us of various so-called crimes for providing humanitarian aid out there.
He says since 2005, several No More Deaths volunteers have faced felony charges for transporting undocumented migrants and criminal misdemeanors for leaving food and water in the desert.
We have that responsibility under the law and under International Red Cross standards. The International Red Cross Code of Conduct says clearly everyone has the right to provide humanitarian aid in an area of disaster like this, where thousands of people have died.
As an ordained Presbyterian minister, Fife was arrested back in 1985 after his congregation became the first religious institution in the U.S. to offer sanctuary to migrants who faced deportation.
A real bunch of desperados. There were 2 Catholic priests and 3 nuns, and the director of the Tucson Ecumenical Council and myself, who were charged with various felony crimes.
Among other charges, Fife and some of his co-defendants were eventually found guilty of transporting and concealing undocumented migrants. 33 years later, in January of 2018, No More Deaths volunteer Scott Warren was arrested on similar charges for allegedly harboring and shielding 2 undocumented migrants from law enforcement at the group's base camp in Ajo, Arizona. Fife contends Warren was simply providing humanitarian aid in keeping with No More Deaths protocol.
He gave food and water and some medical care to 2 migrants who just showed up at our base camp.
But in court documents, federal prosecutors disputed that claim, arguing that Warren did not provide medical attention, nor were people associated with the charges in distress. They also said he was, quote, not required by his beliefs to aid in the evasion of law enforcement. Warren's first trial ended in a mistrial after jurors couldn't reach a verdict, but federal prosecutors will seek to retry him this week on 2 felony harboring charges. He declined an interview for this story due to the pending trial.
The enforcement effort always depends on the political context and the messaging.
Longtime migrant rights advocate and lawyer Margot Cowan says she's represented dozens of humanitarian aid workers who have faced criminal charges. We interviewed her at a migrant legal aid clinic that she supervises for No More Deaths in Tucson.
We have gone through periods where the U.S. Attorney has said to his clients, the land managers and the Border Patrol, don't cite these people and don't bring these cases to me because we're not going to prosecute them.
Arrests of people who provide aid to migrants have been on the rise since 2015 and spiked in 2017 when then Attorney General Jeff Sessions ordered federal prosecutors to prioritize cases covered under the harboring statute.
In fiscal year 2019, there were close to 4,000 convictions for bringing in and harboring certain aliens, a 34% rise compared to 5 years ago, according to data from Syracuse University.
The idea to prosecute Scott sends a message to the larger community. If you see somebody lying beside the road, you can't stop and help them because it might be a felony. I mean, there's all sorts of levels of communication that go on in these kinds of prosecutions, not just directed at the volunteer.
John Fife believes Border Patrol agents targeted No More Deaths because of a report the group published on the morning of Scott Warren's arrest. It included video allegedly showing agents destroying gallons of water they'd left for travelers in the desert, an act the group says the Border Patrol frequently performs.
We released that report and sent a copy to the Border Patrol at 8 o'clock in the morning. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, agents had raided our base camp and charged Scott Warren with felony charges.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection did not respond to PBS NewsHour Weekend's request for an interview or written statement for this report. Despite the legal challenges facing No More Deaths and other groups, Fife believes that the U.S. government's actions will do more to help their cause than to hinder it.
Everybody who's doing humanitarian aid work globally to save lives, we have a responsibility to them to maintain our right to provide humanitarian aid. So the charges have really galvanized an international awareness of the basic human right to provide humanitarian aid under these circumstances.
This is PBS NewsHour Weekend, Sunday.
In the Russian region of North Ossetia, an 83-year-old woman is still delivering the mail on foot. She's become something of a celebrity, and after more than 50 years on the job, neither mountain roads nor fans who want selfies slow her down. 6 days a week, Ekaterina Zhaleeva walks an arduous 25-mile round-trip route, delivering the mail to 3 small towns in a mountainous region near Russia's border with Georgia. After being profiled on local television, she's become something of a celebrity. She's often stopped along her route for selfies and hugs.
We respect her age very much, especially considering that it is a mountain area. I don't think it's easy even for young people to walk along these roads.
Now 83, Zhaleeva was inspired to become a postwoman during World War II, when her brother was sent to the front lines and letters were the only source of news.
Then I told myself that when I grow up, I'll definitely become a postwoman. Then people will be waiting for me, and they will love me.
Her brother never returned from the war, sending his last letter in 1942. She says walking the mountain roads is both financially and emotionally beneficial, bringing her relief from the thoughts of the family she has lost.
My salary isn't that big, but it helps me. I find it easier when I'm walking. I find it easier when I chat to people. I've experienced a lot of sorrow, and I think about it when I'm doing nothing, and it's difficult for me. But when I leave home, it's easier.
These days, Zhaleeva does take an occasional offer of a ride along her mail route, but mostly she walks 25 miles a day, 6 days a week. NewsHour will broadcast the upcoming impeachment inquiry public hearings live on Wednesday and Friday and stream them on demand on all digital platforms. Wednesday's hearing is set to begin at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Check your local station's listings for additional coverage. And tomorrow is Veterans Day, a day to honor and thank all who serve or who have served in our armed forces. That's all for this edition of PBS NewsHour Weekend. I'm Megan Thompson. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Bernard and Irene Schwartz, Sue and Edgar Wackenheim III, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, Rosalind P. Walter, in memory of George O'Neill, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg. Corporate funding is provided by Mutual of America, designing customized individual and group retirement products. That's why we're your retirement company. Additional support has been provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people. And by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.